Next up, we have Justin Dalaba. He just graduated this past spring from St. Lawrence University with a degree in conservation biology. He's been working here in Newport with the Marine Reserves program of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And one of his goals this summer was to set aside 1 day per week to explore Oregon via activities such as hiking and fly fishing and diving or snorkeling. So let's hear what he did this summer.
All right. First, I'm just going to pass out a few of my surveys. There's not enough for everyone, so just pass them around and share with your neighbor. Please don't write on these. All right. So thank you, Haley, for the introduction. As I've been introduced, I'm Justin, and I worked with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife this summer on the Marine Reserves Project. And so what the Marine Reserves Project is, really the primary goal is to determine the social, cultural, and economic impacts of the implementation of marine reserves in Oregon. And so for those of you unfamiliar with what a marine reserve is, there are 5 no-take zones established along the Oregon coast, and they're within a few miles of the shore. And Ed will also cover this a little bit more in his presentation because he also worked with the Marine Reserves team. But our scientific goal for the Human Dimensions Project was to conduct research that informs nearshore coastal management. And so to meet that goal, we designed a survey, which some of you are holding in front of you. And this survey was designed to gather information about public ocean awareness. And the things that we were interested in gathering information about were visitor perceptions of knowledge, their actual knowledge, demographic factors such as age, gender, education, and residency, and then combining those to learn what people know about the Oregon coast and in general about global ocean issues. So we performed this study along a 258-mile stretch of the Oregon coast. That's what this map is indicating. And since our goal was to assess public awareness on the broader scale of Oregon, not all of these sites fell within marine reserves, but these are 23 sites along the Oregon coast, as you can see there. And they were divided into 3 zones, the North Coast, Central Coast, and South Coast, based on county line divide. And we were able to, as of this past week, we're able to collect 594 surveys. So we met our goal of a large random sample size. And from the first 382 of those surveys, we were able to compile some statistics. And what we found was it was about a third, and a third split of people who felt that they were well informed about Oregon ocean issues, people who felt they were not well informed, and people who felt they just didn't know at all. And so who was our audience? We had about a nearly equal split between men and women who responded to our surveys. And 21% were first-time visitors, 13.8% were coastal residents, so they lived on the coast, and the rest of them, the vast majority, were repeat visitors, and they came back to the Oregon coast. So of those residents, or of those respondents, most of them, another large number, 80%, a vast majority of them were coming for beach recreation, so that's what some of these pictures are showing on the right-hand side. And this was a fairly educated public. We found that the mean level of education was 16 years, so that means most of the respondents had at least a college degree. And the ocean issues that we focused on, as you can see on the first page of the survey, those 2 big charts, those are showing 9 ocean issues. And of that list, we found that ocean acidification and hypoxia was the least well understood issue. And the highest perceived threat in Oregon included water pollution, marine debris, loss of marine biodiversity, and rising sea temperature. And again, this information is coming from our first set of 382 respondents. And then the lowest perceived threat in Oregon in particular was included ocean acidification, hypoxia, wave energy and power development, and oil and gas exploration and transport, but these were also the least well understood issues. And so we're continuing to dive into the statistics, and we're going to grade at the end of the survey, there's a little ocean quiz that we came up with, and we're going to see how people did on that and compare that to how people perceived these ocean issues. And so what we expect is that the level of concern with the environment is going to be associated with an individual's degree of awareness. So that's really why this study was important. And it gives us a sense of the existing knowledge of ocean issues in Oregon from visitors and residents. And it also has implications for the future future health of ecosystems and the economic vitality of the coastal economy. So replication of this study could help us over time determine the change in visitor knowledge and awareness of these ocean issues. And I'd like to thank my mentor Tommy and Haley for helping me out with this study, and also for Sea Grant funding this study. Thank you. Yes?
Justin, what do you think about the order in which you presented these threats? I was just struck by, as you went through the threats, those that you mentioned were the highest were those three that you presented first, and the least were the last three that you presented. Do you think your results would be different if you had shifted those around?
That's an interesting thought, yeah, and so the way that these questions were designed, we did an extensive literature review of previous studies that had asked similar questions, and so that's where some of those issues came about. And then the last few, if I could just look at this, yeah. The ocean acidification, hypoxia, wave energy, power development, those last three that were least well known, we added on to there. So that would be interesting to see if we had placed those first, whether that would affect how people felt they were as far as awareness, yeah. Thanks. Any other questions?
So in looking at your survey, question 9, a lot of these elements seem very similar to each other. So what were you trying to get out of this question?
So that was a question that actually raised a lot of questions from our respondents. It's from a standardized survey called the Connectedness to Nature scale, and that's able to place people on a scale of their connectedness to nature, essentially. And they're really all gauged to get a sense of belonging in community, like how people feel in the natural world. So that's why they all are kind of similar. But the number that they indicated from a scale of 1 to 7 is going to place them on that scale of sense of belonging, essentially.
You might have said it already and I might have missed it, but how did you disseminate the surveys and how did you keep it random?
So the way that our sampling worked was we had a random rotation by time of day and time of week. And so, as I mentioned, the sampling was split up from North, Central, and South Coast. So it's over 6 weeks. So 1 week we would spend 3 days per week on the North Coast sampling and start at one site. Say if we started in North Cannon Beach in the morning, then we would switch that the next day, start at the southern end in the morning, and then move up. So that would help randomize who we're getting, because it varies by time of day who's coming to the beach. And additionally, this was totally random. We just handed these out to each visitor that passed by. So the rotation by time of day, time of week helped randomize this survey.
Sorry, but did you have specific points or did you just run out to the middle of the beach and stand there? Or?
Yeah, right. Thanks. Yeah, they were access points that were scenic viewpoints or pullouts where there was a pretty high frequency of people coming, so they were the same site each time we went back to that.
And then last one, did you give them out to individuals or groups?
Yeah, we would hand them to individuals, and oftentimes, since they are an individual assessment of awareness, there would be a group that would come by and each person would take it and assess their own individual knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Were you able to distinguish the perceptions of issues and awareness between residents and non-residents?
Yeah, we haven't been able to do that yet from our results since I said, actually, just yesterday we really looked at the results because we've been spending a lot of time collecting the information, so that's really, we're still in the process of getting that information, but we haven't been able to discern between residents and visitors, but that is one of our goals.
One more really quick, sorry. So I see you have the education level all the way down to like first grade. Did you have a cutoff for like a youngest?
Yeah, respondents had to be at least 18 to take the survey.
Okay. I'm done, I promise.
One last question, so where you were doing the sample, you've already, the people who were taking it have already sort of self-selected to be there.
Right.
So is there any discussion, I mean, this is not necessarily a survey for random people about their perceptions of the coast, but people who are already volunteering their time to go to a beach, who want to go to the beach.
Right. Yeah, and that's why we included the question on there of why people were coming to the beach. And like I mentioned, a great majority of them were coming just for beach recreation, to walk on the beach, fly a kite, that sort of thing. But we did choose those sites because of the time frame that we had, and that just happened to be the most frequent flow of visitors at those scenic pullouts, things like that, which is probably why we got a high percentage of repeat visitors as well. But we did hope that we were being representative in that visitors were coming to the beach for various reasons, and by changing the time of day that we went to these sample sites, different people would be coming. For example, we occasionally ran into people going out clamming or fishermen that were walking to the beach early in the morning, but then later in the day it would just be someone that's out for a stroll that perhaps lives on the beach. So hopefully that answered your question. Any others?